Very much. Well, I love the vision here, a unique church provoking lasting change. It's powerful. And just a little connection story, PAIS is really about that. One of the things that we talk about on PAIS so much is that the things that we're developing, we say we want to develop a new kind of person, not a new program. And our programs are simply catalysts to move to something better. That's literally what we say. So from the moment we started talking, saw an instant connection here with Catalyst Church. So it's really cool. And another story about the lasting change thing. Pat Cleaver, who recommended Jonathan to PAIS Australia, he was on one of my PAIS teams for 3 years in Colorado. So he's a young man that I mentor, watch him get married and stuff like that. And back home in Germany, told Jonathan about PAIS. So kind of cool how those worlds connect all across, isn't it? All right, so let's get started here. Let's jump in. And I've got a picture up here on the screen and would love for you guys to engage in this with me. So take a look at the picture and try to be really creative. So you're going to give me a response here about what you see in this picture. Think outside outside the box as much as you can. All right? And so once you have something, go ahead and shout it out. You can point out the obvious as well. That's fine. But also try to get creative. So what do we got? Anyone got anything? Chaos. Absolutely right. Traffic. People are on the other side of the road. He said wrong side, but I'm just going to clarify that. It's just the other side of the road. Now I could say it's the right side of the road, but I won't say that. I'll just say it's the other side. All right, so what else? What's that? Got to get somewhere. People are going somewhere and they got to get somewhere. That's right. There's movement. I don't know if there's movement in this picture. Late for work. There could be a number of people in there late for work. That's right. Frustration. Absolutely. I hate traffic. I loathe traffic. Yeah. Opportunities to hear the gospel message. I have never heard that one yet. That's a good one. What's that? What's that? A lesson on patience. I don't think I've heard that one either. That's a good one. All right, so I'm going to tell you what I see. I see a broken system. A bunch of people all by themselves heading in the direction the same way. Right? It doesn't make much sense. And I know they got to get off at different places and go to, but still, I bet you there's a number of people who are all heading very close to the same place, right? And they're all by themselves. Now, I see a similar picture quite often, and it might look similar to this morning as well. Go ahead and throw that next one. Did we lose it? Oh, there it is. Right? A bunch of people facing the same way all by themselves. Now, if we look a little closer, there's some people who are really engaged, right? They're thinking, this is good stuff, right? But then if we look even closer, now hopefully that's none of you this morning, right? But oftentimes, the Western church, right, we have this kind of mentality that discipleship looks something like this. And I think many of us know, well, that's not actually the case. So I want to read a portion of Scripture that I think that we're all really familiar with. It's Matthew chapter 28, the very end, right? Jesus says this, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit." Now, I think this next part is often a part that is left out in our conversation about discipleship. And it's this, "and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." See, unfortunately, I think we've reduced discipleship to a passive monologue. So many people all facing the same direction by themselves. Now, I believe Catalyst is not necessarily one of those churches. I believe you guys are on a path. I love even the vision. A unique church provoking lasting change. right? Even the stories that I've heard this morning are about that. The conversations that we had early on, it was like, oh, this is a church that is going there, that is going towards discipleship. And here's the thing, preaching is important. This is important. The gathering of the body of believers for something like this is important, to celebrate, to hear the stories. Preaching is actually a proclamation, right, of the good news. And that's what this is on Sunday mornings, and that's necessary and that's important. But most of the Western world has reduced discipleship to only this. You see what I'm saying? So I believe we need to make a shift in our thinking. Right? So often we think about discipleship in it's in sort of a classroom setting. On PAIS, one of the things that we talk about is we say we want to go beyond education to experience. When we look at the life of Jesus Christ, we see him taking his disciples on an experience. It's not limited to a classroom setting. There are those teachable moments. There is the preaching. Jesus preached. Jesus taught throughout the synagogues, but he also took his disciples with him everywhere, right? And so I believe in some ways to help recapture what it is that Jesus was all about, we need to shift our thinking back to a different word. Discipleship, mentoring. People might be scared of the word mentoring because they think, I wouldn't be a good mentor. But I would prefer to think about the word apprentice, because that means something totally different. Is there anybody here who has an apprentice or is an expert at something? Anyone? Anyone an expert at something? Yeah? Can you come up here? You're not putting your hand up again? Can you come up here for a moment? Give this gentleman a hand, right? Yeah, you look great to me. Yeah, all right, what's your name? Peter, what are you an expert in, or what are you an apprentice of? Or apprenticing someone?
I'm apprenticing someone in is this on? All right, I'm apprenticing somebody in how to live life well.
On how to live life well. Yeah. All right. Okay, now this is going to be a little bit harder. All right, so I wasn't really expecting that.
Do you want me to sit down?
No, good job. All right, so if I don't know what that looks like at all. So could you help me? Like, what do you mean by live life well?
Live life well. I suppose in the world, a lot of people you encounter, they have no knowledge of God.
Okay, so when you say world, what do you mean by the world?
I suppose just living my life, walking through the world, meeting people,
so
encountering situations. Yeah, I do.
Like right through the middle of the earth?
Yeah, right through it.
To the center core?
Yeah, no, it's hot there.
It's hot? You've been there?
I'm told it's hot.
Oh, okay. So you haven't actually been there?
No.
Okay, that's good.
When I'm talking the world, I'm just meaning in my day-to-day living.
Metaphorically.
Well, that's a good word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Are you having fun with me?
I totally am.
That's good. Yeah.
Peter, you can have a seat.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Give it up for Peter. I forgot to tell you guys I was going to do that, didn't I? That I made the AV crew scramble there for a moment. Here's the thing. I love woodworking. It's one of the things I enjoyed so much. And I worked at a wood shop for quite a while. It was a really, really upscale place. It was in California. And our clientele was like multi-million-dollar homes. And I'm working at this shop. And I'm building this huge piece of, I don't even know what it was, just this massive table type of thing, storage thing. And I made a mistake, a fairly costly mistake. And my boss, and I'm like, oh no. And he goes, well, how are you going to fix it? And I'm like, I don't know. He goes, Tony, let me tell you something. He goes, the difference between a craftsman and an apprentice. Okay. He goes, a craftsman learns how to cover up their mistakes and nobody notices. And I'm like, He goes, see, an apprentice has to learn how to do that. So we often make mistakes even in life. And the guy was a Christian. He was a really great guy. And he said, we even often make mistakes in life. And so we have to learn to work through those mistakes. But especially for something like this, we have to move beyond the apprentice thing and become more familiar with it, right? So here's the reality of what that looks like. When we talk about discipleship and we talk about apprenticing somebody, I could have Peter come up and tell me and tell all of us about what it would look like to live life well. But to really actually understand that, I've got to go on a journey with Peter. He's got to walk side by side with me. He's got to see. I've got to open up my life, right? If I'm going to apprentice somebody in woodworking, I could teach them about the tools. And when I first started learning woodworking in high school, I paid attention to the safety lessons because I did not want to lose these things, right? I was a baseball player, and I thought if I lose a finger or a hand, that's it, I'm done. Like my career's over. I thought I had a career in baseball. I think every boy did at one time in the United States, baseball, right? So, but in order to actually become a craftsman, to apprentice somebody else in woodworking, I had to actually go beyond my fears, and I actually had to do it. And I think we have to think that way when it comes to making disciples. We have to bring people with them. We can tell them all about it. We can educate them, but it has to go beyond education to an actual experience. And so this morning I want to share just a few things about what that might look like, right? So one of the things that I always say, and these are areas that we challenge the PAIS apprentices in, is ask for opportunities. Jesus said the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So go out and recruit more people to help you. That's not what he said. He said the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. So ask the Lord of the harvest, right? So we got to ask God. And we have to ask him for opportunities. God, who would you have me walk with today? Who would you have me talk with today? Who would you have me invest in this year? And look at it as a long-term thing. Jesus spent 3 years with 12 people. If he was measured by church growth metrics in the Western church today, he would have probably been seen as a failure because at the end of 3 years, he had 11. That's not good growth. Somebody once told me, never underestimate the power of a small group of people. It's the only thing that's ever changed the world. Right? So going back to the slide, who would you have me invest in this year? We have to have a longer term perspective. And give me the words to say to those who ask. I'm going to tell you a story now, just from my own life, because I want you to know, look, I believe this because I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen how God shows up. Another thing that I really enjoy doing is I enjoy working on cars, specifically Toyota Land Cruisers. We got any Toyota Land Cruiser fans out there? No? Is this a Nissan Patrol place? Did I just get myself in trouble? So, anyway, I love Toyota Land Cruisers. I think they're one of the best vehicles ever made. They're like tanks. You can take them anywhere. But anyways, it was something I did back in the U.S. as well. It was a hobby of mine. Ministry is something that it's never finished. I needed a finished product to keep my sanity. All those who know what I'm talking about agree. So I just thoroughly enjoyed working with my hands and doing things. And I would frequent an auto parts store, very often. And I got to know the guy behind the counter. His name was Ryan Vaccarelli. He was an Italian guy. And he told me one day as I walk in, and he was always great, just always welcomed me, remember my name after the first time. Hey, what car are you working on today? How's the cruiser coming along? Whatever. And I was just really impressed by him. And one day I come in and he goes, hey, Tony, guess what? I think they're going to give me my own store. And I'm thinking, oh. And I told him, I said, hey, man, if anyone deserves it, you do. Really appreciate just the way that you've always greeted me. You're always helpful. Even if you don't know what I'm talking about, you ask the right questions. You don't try to pretend you know it. You allow me to inform you a little bit. You're a great guy. Really, I think that's awesome. Well, as I walk away to go grab a couple of things, I feel like I hear God saying, take him out to lunch and get to know him a little more before he leaves. And I'm like, well, that's just weird. I'm not going to do that, God. No. I don't know if you've ever had these type of conversations with God, but they happen to me. They don't happen all the time, but they happen enough that cause me to wonder what's God up to right now. And so, I do that whole wrestling with God thing where I'm just like, well, I'll tell you what, God, if he's not helping anyone by the time I leave, then I'm trying to find my way out of this, right? Because I don't want to go ask this guy I don't know very well out to lunch. That just seems a bit weird, right? And so I go to the counter, somebody else helps me, so I'm thinking, sweet, I'm out of this. This wasn't God talking to me, it was that pizza I had yesterday. And and soon as I'm done, I pay for my stuff, I look over, and the couple he was helping just walked away like that. And I'm like, well, guess I got to do it. So I walk over, and I'm like, hey Ryan, before you head out of here, you've just been so helpful. I'd love to take you out to lunch, just a way to say thank you and maybe get to know your story a little bit better. You okay with that? He's like, yeah, that'd be great. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess that wasn't that hard. So I get his number. I schedule a lunch meeting. I believe that was a Monday. So about a week and a half out on a Thursday. 2 days later, a Wednesday, so it was still a week and a day out for that lunch meeting that we had, I had a lunch meeting cancel. And I'm like, well, and Ryan pops into my mind, and I'm at this pizza place, and I message Ryan. I say, hey, I had a lunch meeting cancel. What are you up to? He's like, just went on lunch break. And I'm like, well, you want to have lunch now? Yeah, great. All right, meet me over at the pizza place. So he comes over, and he knew that I was a youth pastor. And because he's like, what do you do? Do you restore cars? And I said, no, I'm a youth pastor. And he's like, oh, so he knew that going into this whole lunch meeting thing. And he begins to tell me his story. He begins to tell me what he's going through right now. And I knew he wasn't a Christian. And he begins to tell me, he says, look, I'm just really struggling. It seems weird that you'd ask me to lunch, and even today, and telling me all this stuff about his life, and he'd gotten his girlfriend pregnant, and he really wants to marry this girl, but the mother is turning her against him, and he's like, I want to be a good husband, I want to be a good dad, I'm trying to do the right thing. He's like, I was rubbing her feet and rubbing her back, I'm trying to do everything right, but the mom has turned her against me. He's like, I don't know why, I don't know what to do. And he goes, I'm just so down. And now I may not get the store that I thought I was going to get. Everything seems to be a mess. And in those moments, I sense God saying this to me. I want you to tell him that I've placed him on your heart, and you've been thinking about him and praying for him. And I'm thinking, God, that is really strange. I'm not going to tell this guy sitting across from me that he's been on my heart. That's just not how these conversations go, right? And I've been thinking about you and praying for you. Like, that's just going to sound so weird. I don't want to do that, God. No. And it just won't go away. So finally, I kind of preface it a little bit, and I say, Ryan, I'm a youth pastor. Obviously I believe in God, and I don't believe anything happens for coincidence. And I've learned in my life that when God asks me to do something, it's really important to just obey and just do it. And so I'm going to tell you this, and it may sound weird, but I think that you need to hear that God has placed you on my heart, and I've been thinking about you, and I've been praying for you. Looked like he had seen a ghost, and he's like, no way, man. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, it sounds weird. He's like, no. Last night, he goes, Tony, I hadn't prayed to God since I was 5 years old. I gave up on God. My parents' marriage was a mess. They were always fighting. They were going to get a divorce. And I prayed. I was asking God to bring them back together, and felt like he wouldn't hear me. And I'd given up on him. He goes, and then last night, when all this is coming down, I just said, God, if you're real, if you're out there, show me a sign. Right? So when we ask God for opportunities, he'll give them to us. And I believe that's a part of what it looks like to live our lives as disciples, to walk in that act of obedience, and to step out there and to go for it and say, all right, God, I'm going to trust you. So another thing that I think is really important is this idea of bringing people with. Did I skip one? There we go. Apprentice or student. Again, go beyond education to experience. So show them every tool you have, teach them the heart behind it, and give them the tool and let them use it, right? So often we talk about different things of how to study the Bible, but we don't actually show people. We don't take them with us, right? One of the things that we do on PAIS is something called Haverim, which means study with friends. It's the idea of bringing people along with you to study the scriptures together and to allow God to reveal his heart to us together. We got to bring people with us even when we study the scriptures. And it has to go beyond that. We have to give people tools to use of learning how to connect with God better and learning how to share our faith better. We have different things on PAIS that we teach them to do. The third thing is that idea of bring people with you. We always ask, who are you bringing with you? Asking them to repeat the process. See, I have a guy in my life. I call him Papa Don. He's about 80, I think he's 82 years old. And he's still trucking along great. He goes to Maui often. He's from California, but he goes to Maui often and buys these investment properties and fixes them up. But you know what he does in the process? He always takes a young adult man with him, or two or three, and he apprentices them on how to redo houses. But he also disciples them. He has been faithfully discipling young men for over 60 years. I'm fortunate to be one of those people. That idea of provoking lasting change. Papa Don is a phenomenal example of that. Phenomenal example. And one time he told me, he'd always take me out to lunch or coffee or things like that. And I'd offer to pay and he'd be like, no, I got this. And I said, so finally I asked him, I said, Papa, why won't you ever let me pay? And he goes, Tony, promise me this one thing. Whatever, you never pay for a lunch that you have with me as long as you do for others what I've done for you. And I said, deal. Because that's what it's about. Discipleship, keeping it going, keeping it moving forward, passing it on. That's what Jesus meant when he said, go and make disciples, teaching them to obey. It's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong process, right? I'm going to tell you a story about this young lady named Yana. So Yana was on PAIS team for a couple of years. She ended up becoming a team leader. And so I mentored Yana as the team leader. And I challenged Yana with these similar ideas of bring people with you, disciple others, and how do you help them repeat the process? So Yana ends up discipling and mentoring this young girl named Erica, who was a high school student. And then Erica decided that she was going to disciple an 8th year student and mentor her. How cool is that? Right? 10 more people jumped on board to this idea of passing it on, discipling, mentoring, and having them mentor and disciple. So I had 36 students mentored and discipled one-on-one weekly in my youth ministry as a result of that. That is massive impact. And you can imagine what it did to the spiritual temperature of our youth ministry. When you have 1/3 of your students who are hungry and going after God, it changes things. And not just the average 10%. So, I want to talk about some math, a little bit of math this morning that I think is really, really cool, because here's the potential of what we're talking about when we really go after discipleship. Okay? I've been in youth ministry for quite a while now, 22 years. And I don't know why, but I recently thought about this, and I'm like, why did I not think of this before? So if there's 1/3 of the Christians worldwide, now that's about 700 million people. So that's not saying all Christians worldwide, that's just saying 1/3. Just to make it maybe more realistic, because we know there's a lot of people who say they're Christians, but yet they don't really live it out. They're what we say nominal believers, right? So let's just cut it down to 1/3. Let's say 1/3 of Christians worldwide really get a hold of this idea of discipleship. That's 10% of the population of the world. We're at 7 billion, right? Let's say that they just disciple one person for 3 years. Just one. Jesus did 12. He was much closer to 3, right? But let's just say each of those 700 million disciple one person over 3 years. And they repeat that process every 3 years. So then those that get discipled then, right, do it for somebody else. So in the first 3 years, you go from 700 million to 1.4 billion people, just like that in 3 years, right? Then the next 3 years. So after 6 years, you got 1.4 billion to 2.8 billion. The next 3 years, 9 years, 2.8 billion to 5.6 billion. In 12 years, 11.2 billion people. The population of this world is 7 billion. I don't think we're projected to grow to 11.2 billion in 12 years. In fact, I looked at the projection and we're not. So I believe this accounts for death, this accounts for population growth, it accounts for it all. Do we realize that in 12 years, we can see the entire, it's mathematically possible. I'm like, yeah, let's get on this. And that's the potential that I see happening. And that's why I'm so like, when the opportunity came, hey Tony, would you start up PAIS in Australia? Whoa, that's crazy. I got to talk to my wife first. But the potential is massive. If we get on this and we say, wait a second, I only have to disciple one person every 3 years? That's it? For 12 years? I'm in. And so every time we partner with a church like Catalyst, who is about this, who gets this, right? We've got 5 young adults here who are going to mentor and disciple 3 each. That's part of what they're challenged with. I mean, let's go after it, right? All right. Well, let me pray for us. And I believe Carl's going to come up and close after that. But Father, thank you for this incredible opportunity just to be here this morning. We thank you for this partnership between PAIS and Catalyst. And we do pray, Father, that we will provoke lasting change. Lasting change. A discipleship movement that transforms this world for your glory and for your kingdom. Amen.
Why don't you put your hands together for Tony? Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that big time, really do.